Hello, Wichita Falls and friends and followers everywhere. I am here at Kiwanis Park in Wichita Falls, otherwise just known as the Prairie Dog Park, because this is where the prairie dogs live here. On this nice, undeveloped piece of prairie that has fortunately to now been relatively untouched by the city, any commercial interest or anything, and where prairie dogs have lived here for at least the past 4 decades. And it's my understanding that the city of Wichita Falls are the ones that brought them in here and put them in that enclosure way over there. And they did so to make an attraction out of them. But now that's not good enough, because now what the city is proposing, based on what I've just learned this morning in their last city council meeting of last week, someone sent me a screenshot of they already had this mapped out, a development project that they want to do here on the 15 acres right here in the front of this park here, where the prairie dogs live, and they want to build some stupid amusement here, some attraction here on top of where these prairie dogs live, a little like miniature themed thing, like they want to build a miniature town here and stuff like that, a miniature globe or something. It sounds ridiculous to me. We already have an attraction here at Kiwanis Park. They're called prairie dogs. That's why people come to Kiwanis Park, because they love the prairie dogs. And I don't know if you can see here in the distance, they're chattering at me. There's a prairie dog poking his head up out of the burrow over there. There's a couple more right over there. So this will be like the 4th time I've gone to war with the city of Wichita Falls over them trying to kill these prairie dogs and get rid of them so they can develop this somehow. And you see one running right there. And folks, make no mistake about it. They say that they'll lease this. They're going to lease this to some nonprofit who's going to do this amusement here. If you don't understand that somebody is going to be making money on this, and that nonprofit means nothing. That doesn't mean that people aren't profiting. That doesn't mean that people aren't getting rich. If you don't understand that, then you're really naive to the way that shell game is played. Somebody's going to be making money off of developing this here. And this is what we've constantly have to be on guard against with your city government that's entrusted with your tax funds and your public lands and everything, that somebody's going to try to cash out and help out their contractor friends or their buddies, friends of Kiwanis Park Development, 501c3 or whatever. I don't know that's what it's called, but that's the way they do that kind of shit, like the lake development stuff. They get they found some kind of a 501c3, and then they get all the people in business, the contractors, people that are going to make money on various ways that they play that shell game. There's going to be people making money, but they'll call themselves nonprofit. So they don't even propose to really make money off of this. They're going to lease this 15 acres or whatever to this nonprofit for like $1 a year. Based on I don't know much about the details yet. I only was sent a screenshot from what was discussed. It was basically a diagram, a map of what they plan to put in out here. But so I will dig into this and find further details on it. But the main point is that we already have an attraction out here that everybody loves. And the citizens of Wichita Falls and surrounding areas, tourists, people that visit here frequently, have told you in the city of Wichita Falls government. They've told you time and time and time and time again that they don't want this. Leave the prairie dogs out here the hell alone, because the balance of people love them. They want to see them here. They don't consider these pests. They don't consider them vermin. They are beloved critters. People come out here to see them. That's why there's not a whole lot of other reason, okay, other than maybe proximity, that most people would just bring their kids to this park as opposed to some other. They have plenty of choices, but Kiwanis Park tends to be fairly busy, and that's because people love the prairie dogs. So I guess we're going to have to start this again and raise support for protecting these guys. Otherwise, they're going to come in here and they're going to dump, poison gas pellets in their burrows and seal them up in it, or introduce CO2 and seal them up in it, or whatever. The last time that I discussed this matter, a couple of years ago, where they were sealing up the burrows out here, and they knew what they were doing. They come out here with the machinery and they plug up their dens, and they roll over it with machinery, and they pack it down really tight, and then they say, oh, well, we're not trying to kill the prairie dogs. Well, yes, you are, because and they'll tell people, well, they can dig back out. We're just, they can dig back out. They'll be okay. That's incorrect. They can't dig themselves out if, see, when a prairie dog digs their burrow, they're starting from the top, and then they're digging, and then they're moving dirt back out again as they go. They're pushing the dirt out. If you bury them and they're starting out inside, they really have nowhere to put the dirt. They can push it behind them or whatever, but they're also working against time because they've got limited oxygen supply down there. That's not the case when they're tunneling down from above. That's like entombing a bunch of coal miners or whatever, and then saying, well, they've got unlimited time to they can just dig themselves out. That's not the way that works. When you've sealed off all of their secondary ventilation and things like that, they have limited time to dig themselves back out. They know exactly what they're doing when they entomb them in here, when they plug their burrows back up. So the last time I went through this with Mayor Tim Short, and he brought his park superintendent out here at the time, or supervisor, whatever you want to call him, Terry Points. I didn't really like that guy. I think he was an asshole. And he brought out a assistant city manager and stuff, and they just pretty much, they were telling me that they were live relocating these guys out to Lake Arrowhead, to a piece of property, a park out there that the city owns. But they didn't have any substantiation of that. They could not show any receipts. They had no photos, no video. They had nothing in the way of, accounting, expenditures, nothing they could show where they had actually live trapped any of these prairie dogs and then released them out there at Lake Arrowhead. So they had no proof. And then I told the mayor at the time, and unless that's what you're coming to discuss with me, and you've got receipts that you can prove what you're disputing what I'm saying. I'm alleging that you guys are killing them, and you're disputing that. So they showed up with no evidence that they were actually live relocating them, and I don't believe they were. They were just bullshitting everyone, because there are very few ways that you can actually successfully live humanely trap these prairie dogs and relocate them. You can't just set a live trap out here on the ground and bait it and then hope a prairie dog goes in there, you know, like a skunk or a raccoon or something, or a feral cat, and you're going to trap it. That's not the way it works with prairie dogs. What the relocator had to do, and this is pretty much the best way to do it, back in, 2017, when we actually forced them to contract with the relocator, Linda Watson, to come do this last time. And she'd been doing this a long time. And really the way to do this was you have to place a live trap right over their entrance. You have to like kind of dig a little square around and then set your live trap up, you know, either at an angle or straight up and down or whatever. And then you have to go around and fill in the other escape routes, or leave one open, and then fill it in with water. So you basically flood their burrows, right? And that forces them out. When the water level gets high enough, it forces them out, and they'll pop up out of the last, like, say you filled in all these other, you know, exit routes, and then you've got this one over here and this one over here, and you put a live trap right over that one. And then you're basically, with a 500-gallon water buffalo, a water trailer, that's what she was using, introduce the water into the den, and then the prairie dog is going to pop out, try to escape out of its last route of escape it has, and it's going to jump right up into the live trap, and then you're going to catch it. That seemed to be the most efficient and effective way to do it if you don't want to kill prairie dogs. Well, I can tell you that whenever I've come out here and found all these dens filled in, and I dug them open, and I let the prairie dogs back out again. I freed them when the city was trying to entomb them in there and kill them, and I found no evidence that they had done anything to try to live trap them. The story was bullshit, because there was no evidence that they had dug around and set a live trap over the den, like Linda Watson had actually trained at least one of the park workers here. She had him, he was like by her side the entire time, because she was basically teaching him, here's how you do this after I'm gone, so that if you have stragglers here and there, you'll know how to do this. And so if he was following the example that she set, the model that she set, because I was out here as well, and I saw her training him, and I was following along as well, and I saw no evidence that they were doing it the way that she trained him to do it. And the dens had not been filled with water, so they weren't trying to live trap them. There was no digging around. There was no evidence that they had placed live traps, as if they were trying to trap them alive and relocate them. So that whole story about them moving them out to Lake Arrowhead, and I asked them at any time, if you've got any kind of proof, you know, you can come back to me and I'll change what I've said publicly about it. And they never have, folks. And the mayor was teeth gritting mad at me about it, and brought like 5 people out here with him, or there was 5 of them. He brought like 4 people with him out here. 5 against 1 to go against me, and then there was Mary Kemp's husband was out here just as a witness, and you know, all that just to go against me on this issue. But they never could produce the receipts, and I told them, well, you know, and they said, well, we'll try to get some of that and get back to you, yeah, blah blah blah, whatever. They never did. So anyway, they're going to come out here and they're going to do this again, folks, if we don't stand up to this and tell them that we want them to leave the prairie dogs out here the hell alone. They are the main attraction that people come out here to this park for. And we don't need all this nice green space right here, this nice prairie right here. I mean, we don't need more steel and concrete in our damn public parks. What can't you morons, what do you not understand about that? When you speak to most of the local citizens, they're not in favor of this. But these politicians and these bureaucrats and these people that are just getting rich off of being given contracts by these bureaucrats and these local politicians, blowing millions of dollars. We need all new schools. We need all this millions of dollars worth of bike trails all the way around the city that, most of your bicyclists, they're not even using anyway. They're still riding on all the damn city streets, even though we spent millions on these bike trails. I hope that is not... Okay, that's a leaf. I was worried that might have been an injured prairie dog. So, yeah, they just don't listen. It's just everything to waste your money. And it's, it would be one thing if they were doing something here with this that was going to even if it was going to make the city a bunch of money or whatever, I still wouldn't really be for that, flattening all that and destroying those, homes of those prairie dogs to do it. But it's just like insult on top of insult, because they don't even propose to make any damn money on it. It's freaking ridiculous. And the black-tailed prairie dogs, these are animals that are close enough. They are threatened enough with extinction in North America that conservationists have been trying to get them on the endangered species list for years and years. And of course, it's very hard to get something listed as an actually federally endangered species. But the black-tailed prairie dog is one that, if I'm remembering my figures right, it's been a little while since I looked this up, I think they have been extirpated, which means extinct locally, or regionally from a certain geography, extirpated from like 75 or 80% of their geographic home range, across the Central Plains. And, I guess they range up into maybe Alberta, Canada, but across Texas and through the plains, there's recovery efforts, where they're breeding these guys and trying to, like in either South Dakota or North Dakota, where they are trying to introduce these guys back onto land which is held in trust for conservation purposes, to get their populations to bounce back. So these prairie dogs are very close to being endangered species, and yet every time you turn around, you've got these cities like Wichita Falls, and Lubbock has done this in the past. I guess they've had their struggles with this. Lawton, Oklahoma, has been in trouble about this before for illegally. They got in big trouble by the EPA for illegally poisoning prairie dogs in one of their parks. But everywhere you turn, you've got these municipalities that are looking to just kill the prairie dogs and treat them like nuisances. And people love them. These are actually, they're prairie squirrels. They're ground squirrels is what they are. Look at that. Where are you? There you are. Just the cutest things ever. And there was some Karen who had made a post this morning, or I saw the post this morning, but he had made a post on one of these local bitch groups, That's what it is. That's where malcontents go to complain about everything. And he had made a post complaining about how the prairie dogs are taking over the park again. And they're varmints and something needs to be done about them, or else they're going to end up in people's yards over here again. Well, first of all, folks, I think his name was Larry Stetzer or something like that. I'll have to look at the post again. But he's connected with media here in this town. He worked for Channel 3 at some point, I guess. Don't know if he still does. I guess maybe he worked in some capacity in media, right? So and it seems to me he was like mainly some kind of a restaurant critic, and looking at the post that he's made, he's really comes across as a freaking Karen. He's an asshole. Not very likable from what little bit of content I've seen. Never heard of him before this morning. But folks, the way this happens is that I'm convinced, and I'm leveling the charge right now, that somebody has recruited this man to be their junkyard dog, to start throwing out anti-prairie dog posts, generate content critical of the prairie dogs, and to gin up fears about them again, and gin up support for eradicating them again. And because this is the way this works. Bureaucrats and members of government, so that they're not the bad guys, they're going to go out there and find somebody in media they can pay off or call in a favor or something like that, and they're going to get them to be their junkyard dog and to start generating this propaganda. And I'm alleging that's what's happening. This guy is out there running interference to try to drum up support for the prairie dogs needing to be killed off again, so that they can develop this area of the park out there again. That's what's happening, folks. Understand how that works, and don't be fooled. But anyway, one of the things this particular moron was alleging, again, the same old story again, that they did before, about the prairie dogs going to be getting into people's yards, burrowing in their yards. They're called prairie dogs for a reason. No prairie dogs, nobody. Going years back, when we first had this problem with when Mayor Santa Ana was in office here, and they first started this out here. I think it was 2017 when I first went to war with them about it, when they started flattening all their homes out there in the enclosure and killing them. That's exactly what they were doing with their machinery. But we had the same idiots spreading the same disinformation, malinformation. This was intentionally false information then, alleging that, well, they could be carrying plague and they could bite your kids or your pets or something, and they're going to be encroaching into your backyards and everything. Those of you who live here near the park, no, and none of my critics, none of the critics of the prairie dogs were ever able to produce a shred of proof that any prairie dogs had made their homes in anyone's backyards, over here or over there. Nobody could ever produce a shred of proof, photograph of a burrow even, because that's not what prairie dogs do. They're called prairie dogs because they like nice, big, open spaces like this, so that when they give their warning calls like that, they echo it to other members of their colony, and they can see threats. They can see threats across the open ground, across the prairie. They do not like the confines of, you have dogs and cats and shrubbery and trees and your fences, and then there's you and your kids and everything. There's all of this. It's everything that prairie dogs hate in your backyards over here, okay? No prairie dogs are making their homes in any of your backyards, okay? And I challenge any of you to show me proof that any has. I called you a liar, okay? You can't prove me wrong. You can't change my mind because I know too much about these animals, okay? They're not gophers. They're not moles, okay? They have different habits entirely. Prairie dogs are not and will not make their homes in your backyards over here, okay? So just stop that. They like these nice wide open spaces where they can run from their one entrance to the other, so they've got a nice escape route. If they're out here foraging and they can see the open sky, they can see if a hawk is coming or a coyote or anything like that, and they've got a burrow real close. And so a lot of trees being overhead, a lot of cover or fences or anything like that completely goes against their natural behaviors, okay? They're not going to make their homes there. This for all the 40 plus, maybe going on 50 years now that these prairie dogs have been out here in this park, okay? They have self-managed, and they have remained inside the boundaries of this park here, okay? If you've got evidence otherwise, please produce it, because nobody, since I've started really going to bat regularly for these prairie dogs, the people that have criticized me and who want prairie dogs dead for whatever, I'm not even understanding the assholes out there amongst you who hate these guys so much. Why, what kind of a pathetic loser do you have to be to have so much negative feelings towards these little critters that you actually go out of your way to make posts and everything about how much you hate them? What did a prairie dog ever do to you? Did a prairie dog steal one of your Amazon packages? Did it shit on your lawn? None of that happened. I don't understand these morons unless there's some kind of a financial motivation. Why you would care so much about killing these guys? Because most of the public likes them and they want you to leave them alone. So anyway, folks, share this video. We're going to have to start this up again. I will probably create a Facebook group for this if we got to organize again and everything. But if you don't want this damn park here, if you don't want this front half of Kiwanis Park here, these prairie dogs here, their homes to be flattened and for them to be killed, so that the city can turn this over to some kind of a development out here for some crap. If you don't want to see that happen, you got to get involved. You're going to have to make calls and emails to city council members and the mayor. And the way this works is you need to address the elected public officials. You don't need to be just calling, and I'm probably going to make contact with the new parks supervisor about this to try to have a civil discussion and figure out what is their plans here? How are you going to handle this if you go forward with this, with these prairie dogs and everything? And see, can I get any kind of sincerity out of her? Because there was none of that with Terry Points, who just did not care whatsoever. But anyway, the focus of the effort to save the prairie dogs, that should be directed to the elected representation, because those are the decision makers, not the bureaucrats, okay? Not the political appointees, okay? The ones who can stop this sort of thing are the decision makers, and that's going to be the accountable elected representation. So the mayor and your city council members, okay? That's who to address on this. But yeah, we don't need more concrete and steel in our public parks here, do we? Would we like to just have a nice grassy meadow and some prairie dogs running around? Can we just finally just leave them the fuck alone? You know, is that really asking too much? All right, folks. We'll have more about this later. You see that prairie dog there? There we go. Hey, sweetheart. Yeah, this is Mayor Tim Short, city council members. We already have a nice amusement attraction out here at Kiwanis Park. This right here is why people come to this park. Leave them alone.